to migrants in their own countries. What was being undertaken to show that migrants were actually part of societies. And so we were looking at this situation. And obviously when you map solidarity, it's very inspiring. But at the same time, it's very worrying, because what else did we find? We found cases like these. In 1999, taxi driver trials. Taxi drivers who were traveling between the German and the Polish border, who were arrested because they were transporting undocumented migrants from Poland at the time, which was not an EU member state. Or April 1997, a Belgian woman was condemned by the court of the city of Bruges for living together with her undocumented partner, for harboring someone. Or Denmark in 2000, a pastor named Leif Borg Hansen was convicted on 2 occasions for sheltering 29 people who had been unsuccessful in their asylum applications. He provided accommodation in his own home and in other homes as well. And this pastor explained what his reasons were for doing that. He said, "An unjust law cannot be a valid law. For me, there are things that are more important than the law. One is to help your neighbor and fellow human being if you see that that person is in need." We've seen through these cases and many others that criminalization of solidarity is unfortunately not a new reality in the EU. This has been going on for 20 years and more. In fact, the Rizoma project now has seen that this is also increasing. From 2015 to 2019, there have been 158 people who have been investigated or formally prosecuted on the grounds of smuggling. And we have 3 of those people here with us today who will speak after me. We will hear their stories, and we know that the impacts of criminalization on their lives are enormous. Some of them have been jailed. They have seen things that none of us also want to experience. So we see that this is also part of a broader picture. And to go forward, we need some changes. We need some changes on the EU level, and we are so glad to see so many members of Parliament here and their teams with us, and we hope the new Parliament will also work together with us to look at some of the tools on the EU level that need reforming, including the Facilitation Directive. Isabelle Chopin from MPG will speak at the end and talk a little bit about that, what we want to do with that directive. But we need to revise it. We definitely need more clarity on it, some more guidelines. But we also need a new narrative change. We need to see migration in a more positive light. We need to see how migrants contribute to our lives and to our societies in a very positive way. And we also need to see rewarding and recognizing values of compassion and empathy and solidarity, like those who will now speak. And we need to see this more in the media and in what we say and also what we do. So thank you very much for your support, and I'd like to now invite Salam to speak.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Salam al-Din. My journey started on the 3rd September 2015. I came home, turned on the TV, saw a child in the news. It was Alan Kurdi. The day after, I bought the ticket, and on the 5th September, I arrived on Lesbos Island. 3 hours after I arrived, I was already swimming to the boat and rescuing people. For that week, I seen dead children, I see dead people. So I couldn't just go home and live my life and normal. After 1 week, I went back to Greece with 30 friends, and I started the organization Team Humanity. Mostly was it the rescues in the sea, and there was so many things that we seen, like dead children, women, men who try to come to Europe to start a new life. After 4 or 5 months, I got arrested on January 14th, 2016. It was the middle of the night. We got in a Suez call. 2 boats were sinking. We were in the sea trying to find them. Called the authorities, the port authorities, told them there is 2 boats sinking. They told me that if you find the boat or you find the people, call us. They put the phone down. 5 minutes after, a huge military ship came to us. We got surrounded of 3 boats after that and got arrested. We didn't understand why. Only 14 hours before this, we saved 51 from drowning in the sea with the green light of the port authorities. So we were sitting in jail for 3 days. They accused us for human trafficking. They said that we were in Turkey and we smuggled people. They gave me a paper. It was in Greek. I don't read Greek. I didn't understand what it says. And they said I had to sign. They threatened me to sign even. I didn't sign, and I told my colleagues to don't sign the paper. Then they had to call our embassies, and the lawyers came, and my lawyer told me in that paper was saying that I admit that I'm a smuggler, and I was in Turkey smuggling 64 people to Greece. So for 2 years, I couldn't leave the country. I got released, but I couldn't leave the country. I had to stay. Every week, I had to go to the police and sign a paper. All the other from team could leave. After 2 years, they let me go, but I had to come back to my trial. Last year, 7th of May, I got acquitted. I won the case in the court, and I didn't go back home to my country, Denmark. I started a huge women and children center next to Moria camp. That is one of the worst refugee camps in the world. And I get harassed every single day. Every single day, the police are threatening to shut me down, arresting me, only because we're trying to give some hope to these people. As you all know, there was a big fire in Moria camp that is on Lesbos Island. Some people died. We have a center where we evacuated all the people. This center, the government came 3 weeks ago to shut it down. They want to shut it down because they say we have hygiene problems. Moria camp is the biggest hygiene bomb you can find. We have a safe place for children and women. We shut down 3 weeks ago. But especially that Sunday, I had some donations of 400 euro so I could buy some gifts to children. So I decided to open that center. And 2 hours after I opened, there was a fire in Moria. At the time of the fire, I had 1,700 women and children in my center. Imagine if this women and children was in the camp. I had people coming and hugging and kissing and say, thank you that you opened, because we were in those tents. We were in this isobox who got burned. The police, the authorities didn't support us. We were alone. There was fights, there was gas. They started shooting with gas after women, children, families. We had babies coming, they couldn't even breathe because they were shooting after the gas. Situation now in Lesbos is very critical, and we can't even do our job because we get criminalized every single day. if there is no solution from European Union with these camps, with all the work that humanitarian workers do, then why do we have the European Union? I want to thank every single volunteer that sacrificed everything to help, to be there for the sake of others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Salah. Now I would like to introduce you to Annick van Gestel, who's a journalist, activist, and a Belgian who has been criminalized. Hi, my name is Anouk. I'm a journalist. This morning, I closed the door behind two migrants. They were both Syrian, and one is in Belgium for 5 months without a house, without papers, without anything. And he left Syria because his wife and daughter were killed in a bombing. His daughter was 11 months old. So I shelter him, and I shelter about 50 other people in my house. And one day, that was in October 2017, some people banged on my door at 5 o'clock in the morning. They came in, there was 7 policemen, and I was really in shock, and they searched all the house, and then they went away with all my computers, with my USB key, with everything. And I said, but why? You say, you know why. Okay, I know why. And then after 2 months, I received a paper saying that I was convinced for trafficking, for international criminalized organization, and that was it. So there started my real problem. And after 2 years of trial, we were acquitted. I am not alone. Zakia is here. She is also on the same bank as me. And this is really destroying lives. You cannot imagine, because Zakia went for 2 months in jail. I had the chance not to have to go to jail. But still, we received by Facebook and Messenger, we will say, we will kill you, you are immigrationist, you, etc., etc. We had also to go to our work and explain that we were not criminals, etc., etc. So it's a lot of influence. And for me, it started in Calais in 2015. This was my journey. I went as a journalist, I saw something, a dumb, and I could not accept that. I said, 21st century Europe, is this possible? No, it wasn't. And so my first sheltering was with a young Syrian boy who stayed 10 months in my home. And now he has got his paper, he's got his life back on track, and everything is fine. After that, I did it with a young Sudanese of 16. He was for 8 months in a cave in Libya, and he had nobody, nothing. Now he speaks French, he starts a formation to become a restaurant, you're working in a restaurant, so everything is fine. And after that, I want you all to see that we have here Mehdi Kassou. And Mehdi Kassou is the guy who in Belgium started the big platform of sheltering of Belgian citizens. And this work, we still do it. So I was acquitted in December 2018. In January 2019, they went on appeal. So it started all over again. So it has become a political thing. And they wanted to scare us, to scare the people who shelter, the people who do solidarity. And instead, I'm not afraid. I stand in front of you, and I still want to defend the values, because I strongly believe that solidarity is not a crime, it is a duty. It's not my slogan, but I think this is what it has to be. So this is it. And now... And now I think I will pass the microphone to Carola. Big applause.
Yeah, similarly to all those many people who get criminalized for solidarity with refugees and migrants. We have just heard there's at least 160 individuals with documented cases. I got into this situation kind of by accident. I'm in fact an ecologist. I work in nature conservation, but I'm also a professional mariner who used to work on scientific research vessels. As I learned during law lessons at the Maritime University, the rescue of people in distress is very clearly every mariner's obligation, and no one is actually disputing that at any point. But when people in Europe are discussing what is a safe port or what isn't, then we are really never disputing the content of the maritime law. We are discussing racism. We've come here to demand an end to the criminalization of refugees and their helpers. And of course, that's clear, as European citizens, we need to be responsible for human lives at our borders, for everyone's human rights within Europe, but also for ending the socio-economic conditions which force people around the globe to migrate in the first place. What we need to do as European citizens is to uphold and create a future society of global justice and solidarity. So as a mariner who has worked in polar research and who has stood on the North Pole in 2011, I have seen the poles melting and I have become seriously concerned about it. And due to that, what I've seen, I'm sure this so-called refugee crisis in the Mediterranean won't be over soon. The environmental breakdown underway on this planet, and most prominently the climate crisis, will intensify in the next decades. It may soon lead to climate apartheid, as laid out this spring in a UN special report on climate and poverty. Where people already struggle to survive, climate breakdown intensifies the pressure, whether through rising sea levels, water shortages, storm damage, or crop failures, leading to famine and armed conflict. People living in the most disadvantaged places on Earth, who have contributed the least to this climate crisis, are also the first to face its effects. The majority of them are extremely poor and will be completely unable to move to a safe place. What we need is not only to end the criminalization of refugees. What we need are new laws to protect people on the move in a world which is spiraling out of control, endangering human rights around the globe. What we need is to address the problem at core: inequality and power structures and rising poverty and the destruction of our ecosystems, which are all a result of a growth-based economic system. What we need is to end forced migration. What we need is all people to have the freedom and the possibility to make a choice, to be able to live at home safely and securely, or to leave at free will.
Thank you very much, Carola. That was very inspiring and especially the broader picture of what we need to look at. I'd now like to introduce our last speaker and the host of our event, Isabelle Chopin from Migration Policy Group.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Many at our event today. We have heard some very inspiring speeches from Salam, Anouk, and Carola, and we've seen how criminalization destroys lives, not only those of refugees, but also of those who are solidarity. I'm going to be very short. This afternoon, the European Parliament will be hearing from Margaritis Schinas, the Vice President for Protecting Our Way of Life, who will be responsible for overseeing migration. And I see that we have some members of the European Parliament here, so I hope they will be there. But we also want to make sure that they hear from the hundreds of thousands of citizens who time and time again have stood up and demanded that the EU protects our fundamental rights to help. Citizens have donated millions to fund NGO search and rescue boats and volunteers initiatives. And hundreds and thousands have signed petition after petition after petition to call for the end of criminalization of solidarity. No one should be prosecuted or punished for offering help to people in need. So how do we make sure that humanitarian assistance is not criminalized? Hundreds of civil society organizations throughout Europe have signed a joint statement entitled "The EU must stop criminalization of solidarity with migrants and refugees." We highlight two key recommendations for the new Commission. The first one, guidelines to the EU Facilitation Directive on the respect for fundamental rights of human rights defenders and humanitarian actors. The European Parliament, at the initiative of the Libe Committee in July 2018, has already passed a resolution calling for such guidelines. And the new Commissioner-designate Home Affairs, Ylva Johansson, who will be responsible for migration, has confirmed in her hearing this week, this Tuesday, that she will look closer into the Parliament's request on guidelines. So I count on the supportive members of Parliament to look into that. Our second recommendation calls the European Commission to revise the EU Facilitation Directive, which currently allows member states to criminalize humanitarian aid. And why that? Because it fails to define humanitarian assistance, and therefore it fails to protect humanitarian work. The Commission has the competence to do this. These are all feasible policy changes that civil society actors have been demanding for far too long. So how much longer do we have to wait until everyday's act of solidarity, giving someone food, giving someone water, a ride, a phone call, a SIM card, a place to sleep, are turned into illegal acts, as you heard from Salam, Anouk, and Carola? We, European civil society organizations and citizens, have had enough of the EU's inaction. The new member of the European Parliament must hold the next set of European commissioners to account when screening their policy position on criminalization of solidarity. All people have a right to dignity, and all European citizens should have the fundamental right to help. Thank you. Thank you very much to all of you for coming and attending this event. I mean, as you imagine, we're following the issue closely, and we will get back in touch and inform you of the follow-up, and we'll watch carefully what happens at the European Parliament and at the Commission. Thank you very much.
Not really, because I mean, because of the distribution, but the conversation was going in French. I can understand like 70%. But this was the reason, you know, we brought Grégoire, who can, share his story, and I'm, because I'm also not a French person, so I said, okay, I can come, so somehow I can then bring some attention to some people who have a story actually, who are living in France. But since I'm not living in France, I didn't really get engaged so much in what is the state of affairs in France.
go to the woods because he's one of the few who did not vote for the law, even though he opposed, and understand if they are real alive or not. It's really tricky. I don't know what your feeling is.
I think it's really difficult because I had the feeling that he's probably of this party. He's probably one of the more progressive people, at least organizing this event. But then, of course, he's still not proposing the policy solutions which we would want. You know, he still is kind of in line with the party in the end. So, I mean, I thought it was okay to kind of open the discussion, and it's good to talk to people who are in the center of this issue and try to convince them. And yeah, but I'm not surprised that he's on the party side.
Because I know there were a lot of NGOs who have been working with them before, who are kind of like, have been trying to get in touch with them for so long, and now they're trying to do that. And I think they were really waiting to hear from what you had to say, and feeling like you being there was also a sign for them to keep going, and it was very important. I don't know if you had the opportunity to talk with CIMAD and people from CIMAD and other NGOs are
very little because I just arrived church before, but also I think I received a letter from another French MP from Montmartre who was willing to support.
Fiona Lazar?
Yeah. Okay. So she seemed to be very open to do something. Maybe it's worth to
No, but that was, I mean,
I don't know. We had very short meetings, so I'm not sure. But we went into this event being a bit skeptic whether we should go because it's
La prochaine, promis.
C'est quoi votre question?
Ma question, c'est quoi votre sentiment de voir que ces gens aujourd'hui à Bruxelles qui demandent la non-criminalisation totale de la solidarité?
Bah, d'abord c'est émouvant je trouve, et puis dites-moi comment vous voulez que je me mette. Je dis c'est très émouvant, et moi j'ai beaucoup d'admiration pour les gens comme Carolina Rackete et tous ces gens qui se mobilisent pour les autres et qui se mettent y compris en danger pour faire preuve de solidarité. Je pense qu'il est temps qu'on comprenne que la solidarité ne peut pas être considérée comme un délit et que le droit et le fait d'accueillir les gens dans des conditions dignes est quelque chose qui fait partie de nos principes d'humanité les plus élémentaires. Et que malheureusement, aujourd'hui, l'Union européenne est dans une route un peu différente, qui est plutôt une criminalisation de la migration, alors qu'il faudrait accueillir les gens dignement, voilà, tout simplement.
Alors, on le voit un peu la criminalisation de cela, la criminalisation, c'est-à-dire de tous les progressistes presque en Europe aujourd'hui. On le voit avec vous, Mélenchon et la France Insoumise, qui sont perquisitionnés, ils sont traités comme des malfrats, alors qu'il y a d'autres partis qui font pire que ça, mais tout simplement, je trouve qu'on les laisse faire. La justice ne le fait pas. Ce qui montre qu'aujourd'hui, la justice en Europe est entre les mains comme une sorte d'oligarchie qui est là tout simplement au service des plus forts et non pas au service des citoyens, au service des plus pauvres, les syndicalistes criminalisés, les opposants politiques criminalisés, qui sont en France ou ailleurs, en tout cas en Europe. Cette politique elle est en train de progresser un peu partout en Europe.
Oui, bah, je pense que ceux qui dominent aujourd'hui se rendent compte que le système qui est le leur est affaibli et qu'il est contesté de manière très forte partout par les peuples européens. Mais finalement, la seule manière de maintenir leur domination, c'est d'utiliser les outils de la justice et de la police. Et effectivement, quelles que soient d'ailleurs les situations, malheureusement, c'est des phénomènes qui progressent en Europe, mais dans le monde entier, d'utiliser la répression judiciaire, la répression policière pour faire taire les contestations politiques, ce qu'on appelle le lawfare, effectivement. Donc voilà, nous ça c'est quelque chose contre lequel on lutte, on combat, et je pense que c'est important d'avoir des moments de solidarité comme celui-ci. Voilà.
C'est une question. La politique migratoire française avec Macron maintenant, qu'est-ce que vous en pensez?
Qu'est-ce que j'en pense? Je pense que
l'hypocrisie, le double discours.
Il y a un double discours et une hypocrisie bien évidemment, puisque Emmanuel Macron nous dit qu'il est favorable à accueillir les gens dignement, c'est ce qu'il a dit en début de semaine. C'est lui-même qui, il y a un an, a fait voter en France une loi qu'on a appelée loi Asile Immigration, qui a prolongé la durée maximum de détention dans les centres de rétention administrative à 90 jours. Je peux vous dire qu'on est allé visiter des centres de rétention, moi-même, Anne-Sophie Pelletier, qui est ma collègue ici au Parlement européen. Je peux vous dire que les conditions d'accueil dans les centres de rétention administrative aujourd'hui ne permettent pas qu'on maintienne des gens pendant 90 jours dans ces centres-là. Et quand Emmanuel Macron a fait voter cette loi-là, il a été salué par le ministre italien Salvini, dont il nous dit aujourd'hui que M. Salvini a une politique migratoire ou avait une politique migratoire insupportable. Au moment où il y a eu la loi Asile et Migration, Salvini a dit c'est exactement ce qu'on veut faire en Italie que Macron est en train de faire en France. Donc il y a un double discours total sur le sujet. Il est temps d'accueillir les gens qui veulent venir de manière digne. Après, bien sûr que l'immigration est souvent subie et qu'on peut décider qu'il faut aussi s'attaquer aux causes des migrations. En tout cas, nous, c'est ce que nous disons. Et ici, en Europe, on n'en parle jamais. On est dans une logique uniquement policière, de vouloir augmenter les effectifs de Frontex et de maintenir ces accords absurdes, là, les accords de Dublin. Voilà, il y a beaucoup de choses à faire et on va y travailler.
Il y a une dernière question pour ce qui est des démarches de Macron avec cette réunion qui a eu lieu avec 4 autres États. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de cette initiative qui vise à gérer l'accueil collectivement?
Je pense que le système actuel n'est pas tenable. C'est-à-dire le système, c'est les accords de Dublin. C'est-à-dire c'est le pays sur lequel vous mettez le pied en arrivant sur le sol européen qui doit recevoir votre demande d'asile. C'est pas tenable parce que ça consiste à dire que c'est notamment l'Italie, la Grèce qui doivent tout seuls gérer les difficultés. Ça, c'est pas possible. Alors, c'est normal d'essayer de le remettre en cause. Maintenant, la manière avec laquelle le président de la République française et les autres partenaires veulent le remettre en cause me paraît pas adapté. Dire on va faire des quotas de répartition, mais sur la base de quels critères? Les gens qui arrivent, c'est pas des marchandises qu'on doit trier, envoyer dans tel ou tel entrepôt, c'est des êtres humains. Il y a des parcours de vie derrière, il y a des gens qui ont envie de faire des choses. Donc, les répartir de manière automatique me paraît pas la bonne solution. Il faut mettre un terme aux accords de Dublin et dire que les gens font la demande d'asile dans le pays de leur choix, tout simplement. Et ensuite, au pays, de faire en sorte de pouvoir les accueillir dignement. Voilà, pour être clair.
En fait, ces dernières questions, c'est sur le rôle des médias aujourd'hui. On le voit par exemple.
Le rôle des médias?
Oui, le rôle des médias, c'est ce comme on le voit que les sketchs qui sont montrés le week-end passé par exemple sur plusieurs médias français de l'extrême droite et qui favorisent surtout cette montée d'extrême droite.
Ouais, bah, le rôle des médias, écoutez, qu'est-ce que vous voulez que je vous dise? Que les médias sont la deuxième peau du système et que ceux qui croient que ce qui se passe dans les médias sont une arène neutre dans laquelle chaque idée politique sont à égalité se trompent complètement. Donc les médias diffusent, infusent une idée de la... Et c'est clair que sur la question migratoire en particulier, ils ont une responsabilité dans le fait de saturer l'espace politique de discours qui sont de plus en plus nauséabonds. Donc à un moment, il faut prendre des décisions fortes sur le sujet. Nous, en France, nous avons protesté devant le CSA contrairement en ce qui concerne le traitement de la convention d'extrême droite qui a eu lieu le week-end dernier, parce que c'est pas normal que cette convention ait eu droit à une telle exposition médiatique, ça c'est évident.
Par exemple, la France Insoumise au niveau de leur école d'été et d'autres médias, plutôt d'autres partis politiques progressistes, ils n'ont pas eu cette couverture médiatique.
Non, bien sûr. Bien sûr, maintenant, vous savez, moi je suis un militant politique, donc il faut se plaindre et il faut utiliser les termes qu'il faut, mais il faut aussi les contourner, ces médias-là. Et donc aujourd'hui, on a une chance, c'est qu'on a quelque chose qui s'appelle les réseaux sociaux, nos propres outils pour nous adresser aux citoyennes et aux citoyens. Et les médias, de toute façon, vous pouvez décider de vous plaindre, ça ne changera rien. Donc il faut surtout les contourner. Voilà ce qu'on fait. Et ben, c'est ce que vous faites aussi. Voilà.
C'est quoi votre message aux personnes qui nous regardent?
Je ne sais pas, c'est quoi votre média?
European Observatory of Democracy.
Mon message, c'est qu'il ne faut rien lâcher et qu'il y a beaucoup de choses à faire en France, en Europe, partout, pour rendre notre société plus juste, plus égalitaire, plus vivable, plus soutenable aussi. Et qu'il y a de plus en plus de gens qui se lèvent pour ça. Je pense aux jeunes pour le climat, je pense aux gilets jaunes, je pense à ces gens qui ont compris que le système tel qu'il est aujourd'hui, il ne tient pas la route. Donc il ne faut pas se désespérer, pas se résigner, garder espoir et on va y arriver. Voilà, c'est ça.
Merci à vous. Hein.
Merci à vous.
Alors on va ici. What is... Ask them.
No, I had 3 days. I had the people sleeping after the fire. And then after that,
T'as interviewé Moi je vais chercher.
c'est les mêmes, en fait, c'est les mêmes questions.
Juste après,
Oui, merci. On est un média belge. On voudrait vous poser quelques questions.
Il s'appelle comment ce média belge?
EODP.
ODP.
EODP, c'est une association aussi, c'est pas seulement un média, mais il y a une partie médiatique.
EODP, d'accord. Oui,
Ouais.
j'ai vu ça. Ok.
Donc voilà. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez du combat de Rachel Raqueté, de Carola Raqueté?
Je pense que c'est un engagement qui est très important, qui a permis de sauver des vies et qui doit interpeller en tant qu'élu et responsable politique sur notre propre incapacité à faire ce que elle et beaucoup d'autres font aujourd'hui, c'est-à-dire être à la hauteur de à la fois nos principes et du droit international qui est de venir en aide à ceux qui risquent leur vie.
Est-ce que vous allez suivre cette affaire parce qu'elle n'est pas terminée?
Je suis cette affaire à l'Assemblée étant membre de la commission des lois et en charge donc de ces questions-là, notamment des politiques migratoires. La semaine prochaine, on a encore un débat à l'Assemblée de bilan des politiques migratoires en France et en Europe. Et donc on est en tant que militant depuis des dizaines d'années, en tant qu'élu depuis 2 ans et demi à l'Assemblée nationale avec mon collègue Hugo Bernalicis et l'ensemble du groupe de la France Insoumise, on est pleinement impliqué sur à la fois la solidarité concrète sur le terrain. Je suis députée d'une circonscription Paris 18-19 où le mauvais accueil des migrants crée des situations extrêmement dures, intolérables tous les jours. Et en tant que législateur aussi, législatrice, à proposer d'autres politiques parce que d'autres politiques sont possibles. Et donc oui, on est engagé dans cette lutte à la fois de solidarité et aussi de dignité pour nous-mêmes.
Quelles actions la France Insoumise ou vous-même allez initier dans les mois à venir s'il y en a par rapport à ce sujet-là?
Les actions, comme je vous dis, on n'a pas attendu pour les initier. C'est tous les jours sur le terrain où des insoumis et des insoumises participent aux actes concrets de solidarité, font partie des collectifs et des associations qui viennent en aide et puis mènent pied à pied dans les débats publics et politiques la bataille contre l'esprit et les discours xénophobes qui consistent à pointer du doigt les personnes migrantes comme la source de tous les maux. Et donc on continue, nous au niveau de l'Assemblée, comme je vous dis, on a produit, on s'est opposé à la loi Asile et Immigration, on a produit des documents pour proposer notre politique, on va continuer à le faire. Donc voilà, la France Insoumise reste mobilisée, impliquée sur cette question et surtout sur la solidarité envers les personnes migrantes.
Merci. Merci Carola Raqueté.
C'est pas Carole, c'est la députée.
C'était donc, on vient d'aller voir la députée Danielle Obono de la France Insoumise au sujet de Carola Raqueté.
On retrouve Rachid.
Alors, what's your what's your feeling today to be with all these people there in Brussels for say together or ask European Parliament or institution to end with this criminalization for solidarity in Europe?
What I think about it?
Yes. What's your feeling?
I think there were so many people here today that want to do some changes. And I really hope there will be changes. Because innocent people who's putting their lives in danger to help others, they'll get criminalized. They get in jail, put in jail and harassed every single day. And that's not fair. They should have a medal. They should have a medal for what they're doing.
And, what's your message for this European deputy or institution?
I want the European Union to wake up and see things how it is, and see it with their own eyes, the situation, and what the the volunteers, the organization are doing. Because if they don't see that, they only be covered by the media.
How it is in Denmark for immigration people today?
Denmark doesn't help anyone. Denmark is very selfish. They don't want to take refugees, and I'm so embarrassed about that. I'm so embarrassed that Denmark doesn't want to take refugees. It's humans like all of us. One day, it will change. The history will change. Where in 1921, when people ran away from Europe to Africa, Africa took them like families, helped them, gave them houses and everything. Look what Europe doing. Doesn't take them, doesn't welcome the refugees. But this will happen again. The world will change. It's already changing.
What's your message for all people watch us today in Denmark, in Europe, out of Europe?
Find a solution. Find a solution that is not only giving money to the governments to solve it. No, find solutions by rebuilding the countries for the refugees who's running away, and the companies who's selling the guns, let them finance the refugees, because they are the reason why there is war.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alors, comme vous voyez, il n'y en a plus beaucoup de monde ici, en tout cas pour le moment. Il y a déjà une partie des militants qui ont été ici aujourd'hui, qui sont rentrés en tout cas chez eux. Il y a aussi une discussion, je pense, qui va se faire au sein du Parlement européen avec les eurodéputés pour parler de cette question qui est celle de ceux qui sauvent des vies, ceux qui sont solidaires avec les migrants, avec les sans-papiers, avec les demandeurs d'asile, mais qui sont criminalisés un peu partout en Europe en tout cas. Et ici aujourd'hui en tout cas, comme vous constatez, il y a plusieurs militantes, en tout cas, et aux militants, ou tout simplement citoyens qui ont soutenu les migrants et qui les ont défendus, qui les ont accueillis à bras ouverts et qui les ont sauvés en mer, tout simplement, qui sont criminalisés, qu'ils soient en Grèce, en France, en Belgique et ailleurs en Europe. Et tout ça, comme vous constatez au niveau de ces pancartes qu'on a vues tout à l'heure, et parle un peu de tous les pays européens, de la Norvège, la Suède, le Danemark, la Grèce, la Belgique, la France, l'Espagne, tous ces pays-là, ils doivent être conscients, en tout cas, on l'a entendu encore avec le militant ou le citoyen danois qui était avec nous, qui l'a dit clairement qu'il faut se rappeler de l'histoire. Il y a un demi-siècle, un peu plus qu'un demi-siècle, en Europe, on a fouillé l'Europe pour aller en Afrique. Aujourd'hui, il le dit encore, ça peut retourner. Alors, on doit être tous et toutes conscients que l'histoire se retourne et se répète, et on doit tout simplement être solidaire avec tous celles et ceux qui ont besoin de notre solidarité, de notre soutien, qu'ils soient en Europe, ailleurs de l'Europe, sur les ports de l'Europe, mais aussi à dénoncer les tyrannies qui imposent à ces gens-là de quitter leur pays, les guerres qu'on exploite, qu'on impose à des populations pour tout simplement quitter les pays. En Irak, on le voit avec l'invasion de l'Irak, l'Afghanistan et d'autres pays, la Libye, tous ces pays-là, si leurs populations ont quitté, c'est à cause de nos guerres qu'on a en tout cas imposées à ces populations. Alors moi je vous dis tout simplement, on vous souhaite une fin d'après-midi, une belle fin d'après-midi, et on se voit tout à l'heure dans un autre live qui va tout simplement être consacré à autre chose que ce qu'on avait fait maintenant, qui est celui sur la liberté de la presse et la liberté d'information, qui est de plus en plus aussi criminalisée, comme par exemple la liberté de la solidarité qui est criminalisée. La liberté de la presse, en tout cas indépendante et libre ou citoyenne, il est de plus en plus criminalisé. Tous les journalistes qui font pas de filtre, ou qui mettent pas de filtre à l'information, qui filtrent pas l'information avant de la transmettre à la population, ils sont criminalisés un peu partout en Europe. Alors nous, on serait en tout cas avec vous tout à l'heure dans un autre live qui va être consacré spécifiquement à cette question, qui est celle de la criminalisation des mouvements sociaux, ou surtout des médias indépendants. Et merci à vous de nous avoir suivis et partagez un maximum. Et n'hésitez surtout pas à se rendre sur notre chaîne YouTube ODP News et à s'abonner.